What is up, guys? Matt here, and we are studying the book of Jonah. If you missed the first video, please check that out. Last week we looked at Jonah 1 through 5, and we talked about Jonah receiving instruction from God to go to the city of Nineveh, him being disobedient and getting on a ship bound for Tarshish. Alright, verse 6 says, "So the captain came and said to him, 'What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us that we may not perish.'" As I mentioned last week about how I was worried about Jonah being asleep or fast asleep, some versions even say he was in a deep sleep. The shipmaster or the captain was just as surprised. He said, "How can you be asleep?" Then the captain tells Jonah to call on his God and see if he'll save him. So basically the rest of them had already called on their gods and nothing was being done, so maybe Jonah's God would save them. Let's look at verse 7 and see what it says. Alright, verse 7 says, "And they said to one another, 'Come, let us cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us.' So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah." Alright, we see in verse 7 they say they cast lots. So lots can be compared to us flipping a coin or throwing dice or even drawing the short straw nowadays. Casting lots is in the Old Testament and the New, and it's been around for a long time, and this time the lot fell on Jonah. Just like last week when we talked about Jonah not being able to get away from God and what he had planned for him, now the lot fell on Jonah, and the crew was starting to interrogate him. So let's look at verse 8 and see what happened next. Alright, so verse 8, they're starting to interrogate him, and verse 8 says, "Then they said to him, 'Tell us on whose account this evil has come upon us. What is your occupation, and where do you come from? What is your country, and of what people are you?'" Okay, so now we can see in verse 8 that Jonah's disobedience to God is affecting other people. Our lives are like this as well. Our disobedience to God not only affects you or me, but it can also affect others around us. You guys remember Abraham and Sarah. There are many instances where they were disobedient or dishonest, and it affected others. One example is when they went to Egypt and they were in the city, and Abraham told Sarah to pretend to be his sister, and then Pharaoh took her to be his, and God was about to plague them. Or when God said to Abraham he would provide a son to he and Sarah, but he took Hagar to have a child with, and she has Ishmael. Hagar and Ishmael were eventually run out of the group by Sarah. Disobedience doesn't just affect you individually, it can also have major consequences. Alright, let's get back to Jonah. So, as they were asking Jonah all of these questions about what he does and where he was from and what people he came from, they wanted to know what he had done to bring this evil upon them. So in verse 9 it says, "I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." So as I was studying this, I found some great insight on verse 9, and it comes from Dr. David Jeremiah. He says, "A Christian can know and accurately declare the truth about God, but still be disobedient." Jonah said he feared the Lord, but he was still being disobedient to his calling. So we can see in verse 9 that Jonah establishes that he is a Hebrew, which basically answers two questions in one: where he's from and who his people are. And then he says that he fears the Lord. Let's look at verse 10. Alright, verse 10 says, "Then the men were exceedingly afraid, and said to him, 'What is this that you have done?' For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them." Alright, so we can see in verse 10 that the men were exceedingly afraid. The men knew now, oh man, we got a real big problem, because the one that Jonah disobeyed was the God of the Israelites. They were even in disbelief. They couldn't believe what Jonah had done. Look down at verse 10 midway and see what it says. It says, "What is this that you have done?" They were like, "Are you kidding me?" This is Matt paraphrasing here, but you made that God mad? They worship false gods, and even they wouldn't have done what Jonah did. Alright guys, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and look for a new video next week where we explore verses 11 through 17 and finish up chapter 1. You guys remember to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're notified anytime I post a new video. I love you guys, and I hope you have a great week. Remember, lift those weights and grow that faith.